Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It is March 27th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and it looked like it started out to be like we were going to have a range day, and we really did have a range day for probably half the day, 2/3 of the day, and then late afternoon we had another sell-off, and you can see we had a pretty severe sell-off actually. Um, Trading all the way down below, right around 2600 area, a little bit below that actually. So that's a fairly strong sell-off. So what looked like was going to be a relatively flat day turned out to be the volatility just continues to be extremely strong, lots of volume. So um, once we started lower, a lot of chance. There weren't a whole lot of easy to spot trades. Generally, when you're in a range, you're going to buy the lows and you're going to sell the highs. And once we kind of figured out we're in a range here, you only got a couple of decent sales up here, and headed down. There just wasn't a real clear. I believe there's a two-tiered channel here, and we ended up getting a little overshoot, and then we got back inside it. But there just weren't a lot of really clear sell signals to catch this. So I marked a few, and we'll talk about them, but it just really was not a what I would call a real clear and easy day to trade. There were some pretty clear longs in here, and then there's a few shorts, but it just wasn't as clear cut as what we'd like to see. So but we're going to have days like this, so you got to learn to trade them. And again, on a day like this, you don't need but one or two good. You really just need to catch one or two good moves, and you can get a runner and do really well. So you don't have to have a lot of trades. But again, like yesterday, you had to be a little bit patient. Even though we got a nice trend working down here, there wasn't a real good opportunity to enter it. So you just have to be patient during stuff like that. But let's go ahead and we'll talk about the trades. I'm trying to back out enough here. But you can see once you back out, there's no way to see the entire day. So we'll just have to kind of move through the price action. When I came in, prices were moving lower, so we were already in this downtrend here. And notice you got a new high here, and then you got a little failed second entry long, but that was well before I came in. That's 630 or so, and we continue to move down, and then we finally come back to this trend line. I marked this one in green because it's a first entry, but it's still a fairly good trade. So this is really close to being red. And the reason is because if you see that little trend line working up through there, that's the first close outside of it. But notice what happens. You've really got two legs down and then or a leg down and then a little couple of leg correction, then another leg down. And there's really two leg correction in that one. It's hidden, but it's there. We move up, we move down, we go back up. But you get this really big bearish bar. Your stop would still have to go above this bar. And when it broke lower here, you could enter there. I'm not crazy about it, but it is the third touch and the confirmation of that trend line. It is right off the EMA. We do have what looks like at least two legs down here. So it's not a terrible entry, but it's just not a great entry. There's reasons to be concerned about this. You got a little two-bar matching low right there, and that's always questionable, especially when one's an up bar and the other's a down bar. But this is a lower high. It's lower than that one. And so this is really what we're actually using for our signal bar, but your stop still has to go above that bar. So that one's a little iffy. This, just stay out of it. The only way to enter this is on a breakout pullback, and we get one right here. And prices did break lower. So if you'd entered right there, I'm still not a great entry. Again, you got a little two-bar matching low. It looks a little bit like that two-bar matching low. And you're going short right at the low of that move. It doesn't quite pull back, but really you could have moved this down by that point because your closes and all were a little lower. So, but really that's what I would call your support area. And so we're not even getting back to test that, but the fact that we tried 1, 2, 3, 4 times is a little bit telling. and then we made a little bit lower low there and came back. But actually, once this set up, if you weren't already in on this entry here, I would just skip it, because even though you got a nice bearish bar right there, you've got too much congestion and all at that point. So if you entered here, I'm okay with it. And if you move this all the way to the right side and you look at it, you can see it doesn't really look like you've got a lot of congestion yet. So you really don't have that congestion at this point. So if you went short there, and really you could call this a double top, and so first entry long, second entry long, you could call that a failed second entry long when it broke lower. So you got that possibility. So I did mark it green. But once again, I think you're better off waiting on a better entry. You can see it moves on down, you get a nice move, but you don't know that ahead of time. And you definitely don't want to be entering way down here this far away from the EMA, right into the overnight lows, which were a couple of, I actually moved this down earlier. I had it up here at these lows. You can see if you had it right there, you'd have been going short right into that right there. So, and notice where we ended up having these lows here. That was exactly where we found support yesterday afternoon. After we made the new high, we tried to go lower a couple times and found that support there. That's the same location. And so those locations always come back into play a lot of times. So just keep that in mind. But we do bounce off those lows, and notice what happens here. You get a first entry, then you move up and you get a second entry short, and you get a third touch of the trend line. We don't really care that much what this bar looks like on a trap like that, on a reversal type pattern. And at this point, you're hoping that we're going all the way up to the other side. It's a quick, easy scalp, but we start lower again, and we only go back about 50%. And whenever that happens, what you want to do is measure this leg, and if we do go lower, you want to consider a possibility of a measured move. And that would put prices way down here. And of course, we way outdid that by the end of the day. But notice how we bounced right in there again. But we continued to move much lower than that by the time the day was over. So just something to consider there. But that would have been what you would be looking for, is that measured move there at a minimum. So once we started lower here, but again, now you just get a reversal in the other direction. Notice you get a move down, a first entry, you shoot right through the EMA, you pull back, first entry, and then you go lower and you pull back, second entry, and it actually went higher here first, it broke above that bar, confirms that trend line again, and turns to go straight down and goes out the other side. Just go short right there. And at this point, you're looking for prices to probably test this low, but we could get that measured move down. So you want to be prepared for a runner on that one, just in case. We end up moving down. We did push through the lows, but we just end up kind of going sideways here. You do want to buy this bounce here, because at this point you're still going to treat this like, hey, this is probably going to be a failed breakout. And notice what happens. You got a new low, then you got a first entry, you kind of push through the EMA, you got a second entry, and you actually get one more little jog lower, but it wasn't a failed second entry till it broke above here, and there's a little gap there, so you had to be really quick to get in that one, so you may not have got in that trade. But if you could catch this one, if your setup was a little different, or you drop your limit order where your regular buy stop would have been, maybe you could have gotten filled. And it's a quick, easy scalp, but then it just turns lower again. And notice that you did have this little channel working down, and you do move up. You get the close outside, and you try to go lower a few times, and when you can't, you got to assume that this range is probably in play, and this is a failed breakout, and you may catch an important move higher here. So it doesn't work out that way, but still the trade works out, and it's an easy scalp. And then we just shoot down again, and we start the whole thing over again. It looks like it still may be a failed breakout. So this support's still in play until it proves that it acts as resistance. You don't really want to be looking for shorts or anything. And so far, even though we're pushing through it, it's not acting as resistance. So notice it comes right back through, pulls down and tests that, and then goes higher. And it actually went lower again and then broke higher. That's one you might consider. but I really think you're better off to wait on the true failed second entry short, and it doesn't come till way up here, and then you've already got an overshoot of that little channel. So I don't think you want to be going long up there on an overshoot. You might consider that one. That wouldn't have been a bad trade. It's not a great setup, but it's not a bad one either. We're really just kind of playing both sides of that support resistance level there, but it's acting as support. It really has never acted as resistance yet. So if anything, you want to buy here. And it takes off, and now you got two legs up, and then you get you get an overshoot, but then you get your first break, and so you could just turn down, but usually you'll try to test that high, and then you try to go higher once, twice, and that is a failed second entry long. But look at the congestion right there, a perfect doji, three or more bars stacked up. You probably need to skip that. If anything, you might buy it when it breaks. It would have worked if you'd have taken the failed second entry long, but if anything, you probably want to look at a failed breakout to the long side, but trying to retest that high. So you might have even considered that one. So you could argue for both of those to be green. I'm not crazy about them. We're just really kind of going sideways and flip-flopping back and forth here. But if you follow the rules and it's a failed second entry long on a retest when prices are kind of going sideways, you may want to take that one. Same thing here when you get that breakout. I don't have the little lines on there, but let me just kind of draw them. And you can see that. And you can see the little failed break lower. The real problem is you don't have a lot of room back to that high. So that concerns me going long there. So that's why you don't have a blue one there. And then you break out again and fail, but you don't have a very good signal bar. And it runs straight down. And then you're kind of just testing this line again. And then once again, you get a little failed break lower. First entry short, second entry short. So there's your failed second entry short again. You may go long right there. You don't get anything more than a scalp. So by this time, you just want to stay out of that. By this time, you can just see that it's really flat there. So we draw the support, and you can see we're kind of going sideways now. At this point, you really didn't have that, and so again, if you push it all the way to the far right, you can see it doesn't look like congestion yet. It looks like a failed second entry short, so you want to go long there, especially coming off the lows. Because if we continue to find support here, eventually we're going to go higher. But that doesn't work out. And by the time you get over in here, you can see now we're in the trading range. So you just kind of skip out of that. But when we push on up and we try to come lower again, notice this is a perfect double bottom here. I wouldn't say perfect, but it's a double bottom. It's really a triple bottom. Then we make a higher low. So you can count this as a new low, really. It actually is a new low compared to that. So either way, it's a new low. And so first entry, then a second entry that fails. That looks like a reversal pattern. Now maybe we're going back to the high. So I like entering that one. And this one turns out to finally get to take off and get a runner going. And off it goes back to test the top. And again, you get a close outside, move to a new high, and it sells off. And so you notice that's your first close, and that's a pullback first entry, and you also get a close outside, then a new low, and there's a second entry long there. So I like going long on that one. It's only good for a scalp, and then you get that new high, and it turns down. And the fact that we're going sideways here, this is like a failed break out of this. Again, I don't have my lines on there. I always encourage everybody to draw your lines until you get to where you can see this without using your lines so much. But you can see that congestion right across there, that little range. And so that's like a failed breakout, but you've also got your close outside of this channel, two legs up to a new high. And so there's several different reasons to like that long. Generally, you want to wait on that lower high, but in this case, I like going short right there just because there's multiple different reasons. And you're a little bit away from the EMA. You hadn't got back to it since way down here. Notice you got close in here, but you're still not back to it yet. So then it fails out the lower side, and we just kind of go sideways again. So you kind of get in that congestion where you really just don't want to, you got to be careful entering it, all that little congestion until you get that little, one more break higher and then it turns and gives you that big bearish bar. I like entering right there. Again, it's by that time your highs are right here, and it's like a little breakout and it pushes all the way through to the other side. This one you could almost argue for it to be green, but we've tried to go higher so many times that we're probably headed to the other side now. We don't end up heading to the other side, but it really takes off, and that's a nice move down. This one's tempting as well, but it breaks higher here, and it does kind of confirm that trend line. Notice you got your first two swings, that's your third swing, but it's into a little double bar matching low. You're a little bit away from the EMA, and you could argue that this may act as a failed breakout out of this and come back again. So notice that's a perfect doji almost. It's more negative than neutral, but it's still a neutral type bar. And you got a couple more stacked up there. So I was a little leery of that one. I didn't mark it. And of course now we bounce again. And again, we're just kind of chopping around in the middle here. And that's when you got to be real careful. So I just didn't see anything I liked until here when you got a new low and then you get a first entry and a second entry and it bounces right off that trend line, and it's like a little breakout pullback long from that resistance right there. And so you might consider that one. Again, I wasn't crazy about it. I did mark it green. It didn't go very far before it comes back again. And by this time now you've had a close outside this little trend line. You're in this congestion. It does bounce off that high, off those highs again, but I'm not crazy about it. I think you're better off just to wait because we're kind of in no man's land here. And then finally we get a really big push down. We come back. It tests that trend line again, and it comes back a third time. It doesn't break higher here, but that's still 3 different attempts across that trend line. And that's a relatively bearish bar. And so I like that one somewhat. Again, it's not perfect, but you had a pretty good move right there down. And you went right through that EMA, and now it can't even get through that trend line. So you might consider that one. Again, I'm not crazy about it. We push on down, and we come back. And this is just the first entry again, but that's the first pull back to the EMA. That's a really nice move, and you might get a measured move down. That's a big bearish signal bar. It's really big. I wanted to make it green, but I'll explain this to you. I still like it being red, but you can see that puts prices way down here. So that's, if you get that move, it'll be a pretty good move. But what I like doing is waiting on prices to break below this bar, this big bearish bar. See, they're matching at the top. They got the same high. So let prices break that and then drop a limit order back up here where your sell stop would have been below the original bar, and see if you can get filled. And you probably could have got filled on that one. I know you could have gotten filled a couple of 3 ticks in. I don't know if you could have gotten filled 1 tick behind that one. But if you could get in that way, I'm okay with it. And it just kind of takes on off there. And you're looking for that measured move. But again, you get a break. You got your close outside and a move to a new low, but when it turns down here, you may get a second leg down. But I'm gonna wait on a good signal bar or lower high here because you got a little trend line working up, and that's your first close outside. It just takes on off again. So it doesn't really give you that other opportunity. And then as you get down to the low side, again, you want to just stay out of that. It ends up bouncing and going higher. I don't see anything there that I like. We're still right below that original support line, the overnight lows or whatever, and that's the first time it's really acted as resistance, and it comes back and it gets right back through there again. So I'm still leery of that. You wouldn't have had this trend line in place yet. You would have finally drawn it off those 2 swings. You might have tried drawing it if you see it, if you draw it off those 2, but generally you're going to want to drag it to the top. So originally I would have probably been looking up here. I wouldn't have drawn this one until I still probably would have tried to draw this one off here, but it never would. I could never make it fit. But then when we came back again, it proved this is like a little spiking channel is what this is. We spiked down and went into this channel. And that's not an easy spiking channel to find either. Even if you're, even if you're used to looking for that kind of channel here, it's still not an easy one to find. So once again, it wasn't an easy one that you could just find that most people should pick up automatically. So anyway, I don't see a good opportunity. I don't think it's smart just to enter right there off that first high. You need a lower high, and you don't get one till way down here back into some new support here. And you see that support right across there. And so you don't want to be going short right into that. And guess what? It does fail and come back. But I don't think I've exactly got that flat. But anyway, you see my point there. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat. You can see my point that you're going short right into that. And it would have worked, but it does fail and come back again. And then finally it comes back up and it does confirm that trend line and makes a lower high right there. And that's a fairly, and notice this one coming up, you get a close outside. There's two legs up there, and this turns down right off that trend line. So I like going short right there. You had to kind of hang in with this one. You probably could have still gotten out before it came back. So you may not have caught this runner, depending on how you play. But if you could catch this runner, that was a pretty nice trade, and the bottom just falls out. But it gives you another chance right here. Notice how it's coming down. It kind of goes sideways, and I drew that trend line right there, and then it drops down and pulls back and gives you that little breakout pullback and test of the support that now acts as resistance. But the main thing is that's a third touch and confirmation of that little shorter term trend line. So I like that one, and we're probably headed to this line. That's what you're thinking, because you got a little channel working down there. Notice it's fitting off the lower side as well. And so that was your first target, but this thing just keeps going. And so you could have ridden this all the way down well after the 2 o'clock hour. And once it starts going lower, just find your measured distance between here and here and draw you another similar line at equal distance. And look, that's exactly where it bounced. That would have been a great target for you. And that got us into the 2 o'clock hour. We continue to go lower after that, much lower actually. So this was another high volatility day with a lot of movement. And you can just see the different movement across there today. Again, it was sideways most of the day, even though there's some distance in this. If you look here, you're around 26.56. And your high is up there around 26.80, probably 79 or so. So that's a 20-point range. So there's nice trends within that range, or there can be if you're going from side to side. But it didn't matter. Really, from about noontime on, it was all downhill. So it's a lot of volatility and a lot of movement, but not a lot of opportunity to find easy trades today. It just felt that way to me. Maybe I'm just a little rusty from being gone a week, but if you felt like it was a little more difficult today, it felt that way to me too. So if it didn't feel hard today, then that's great. It means you're really picking this stuff up. But to me, it just felt a little, you never could get a real good feel for exactly what prices were wanting to do. They just felt like they were range bound, but we kept pushing through this stuff down here a little bit, but we never pushed through it and held on the other side until really right in here. And then once that happened, the bottom just fell out of it. And of course, that's late in the day, and you don't get a lot of more opportunities on that anyway. So really, up until, I would say, up until 2 o'clock, we were really still going sideways. The market had just dropped a little bit. It's going to be down here now. So it really still felt like a range day, even at this point. It didn't feel like a trend until it was taken on off here. I mean, this feels like, I mean, you can see the trend here if you could find that. But this was not easy to find either, this little spike in channel here. You were better off just to play the short-term stuff. If I back out a little bit again, you can see each one of these trends working. Get that out of the way. Working on the shorter term stuff. And I even looked at this trend right here too. That's what, that's actually, I think, my measured move. See if that's an arrow. No, that was the trend I was looking. I was looking at that for a possible trend, but it didn't. It really, this was your trend line, and there was your break, and moved to a new low. But even if you'd have played it like this, you still got your break and you moved to a new low. So you came to the same conclusion really either way. So it didn't matter how you looked at that one. You still came up with the same end result. So it didn't give you any extra setups or any extra trades or anything by if you played it the other way. And it does fit. It just never really gets confirmed. I mean, if you draw that, you can see that line, and it does fit on the other side right through there too, and you can see that. So I mean, it works the same either way. It gives you the same end result, I guess is what I'm saying. And notice we don't come back to that trend line where it really gives you another setup at any point. So it doesn't really change anything for you. So you didn't need it. And really, that was about it for today. We're almost 30 minutes into this, so this was a fairly long chart lesson anyway. So I'm going to wrap it up. Again, if it felt like it was difficult to find some setups today, it just was kind of one of those days where everything's not as clear. So you had a lot of little short-term trend lines that didn't play out like we normally expect them to. You got a break like this one, you got a break here, but you never could get a new high. Here going up, you got a break, but you never could get a new high. And I think there were a couple of other ones. This one you got a break and a new high. Here's one coming down that's really strong. You get a break, but you can't really get a new low. Next thing you know, you got all this gibberish going sideways to up. And there's just as much sideways action in here almost as there is up, although we are making, you can't really say we're making higher highs and higher lows, even though we are, because you make a higher high here, and then you make a lower low, and then you make a higher high here, and then next thing you know, you got a lower low there. So it's really not your normal, typical price action that plays out like we would expect it to, following our rules. So for that reason, it felt a little different today. But anyway, that's enough about that. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. Oh, I did look at the holiday Friday. The markets closed Friday and the markets closed Monday. So no trading on. I don't even believe there's the short and trading on Friday like we'll have during some holidays. So no trading on Friday or Monday. So we're going to get a long weekend. So anyway, I will still do my usual stuff through Thursday. Normally I'll do a mid-morning chart on Friday, but since there's no trading on Friday, well, there'll be no mid-morning and no mid-morning on Monday, or chart or YouTube lesson on Friday or Monday. So due to the holiday. So anyway, I'll be back again tomorrow, but I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.